When most people discover they can turn $100 into $10,000, their mind instantly shifts into get-rich-quick mode. They imagine doubling their money in weeks, hitting 4 figures in months, and before long, they're fantasizing about financial freedom. This mindset is the exact reason most fail. Turning $100 into $10,000 is not about speed. It is about the ability to think in systems, not shortcuts. The habits that make this possible are called weird because they go against every instinct your brain has been trained to follow. You've been conditioned to want everything now. Fast food, instant downloads, same-day delivery. But wealth doesn't work that way. The people who successfully multiply small amounts into life-changing sums understand something the majority never learn. They know that the fastest way to grow money is often the slowest way to chase it. That contradiction lives at the heart of every financial transformation you'll ever witness. Most people see $100 as pocket change, something they can afford to gamble with. The wealthy see $100 as a seed that could feed them for decades if planted correctly. You don't eat the seed, you protect it, nurture it, and give it time to grow into something far beyond what you originally invested. If you're constantly checking on it, digging it up to see if it's growing faster, you'll destroy the very process that could make you wealthy. The difference between those who multiply money and those who lose it comes down to one thing: how they handle the uncomfortable space between action and result. Most people can't tolerate that space. They need immediate feedback, instant gratification, constant validation that their efforts are working. But real wealth is built in the silence between decisions, in the months where nothing visible happens, in the patience to let compound effects do what they do best. Consider this. If you could grow your money by just 10% each month, that doesn't sound exciting in the beginning. On $100, that's only $10 in profit. Most people would laugh at that return, but those who understand compounding see something different. They see that at 10% monthly growth, $100 becomes over $2,500 in just 3 years. The principle is simple. Small, consistent growth multiplied over time creates results that seem impossible at first. The problem is most people fail to think this way. They want to take their $100 and risk 50% on a single opportunity, because if they win, they're instantly up $50. What they don't see is that if they lose twice in a row, their money is nearly gone and their emotions are destroyed. This is where the weird habits separate the winners from the losers. Winners never measure success by one decision or one outcome. They measure it by a series of small, disciplined actions over months and years. The illusion of speed is what destroys most people's financial dreams before they even begin. You scroll through social media and see someone posting screenshots of massive gains made in days. You feel behind, inadequate, like everyone else has figured out some secret that you're missing. But what you don't see is the full story. You don't see the months of preparation, the years of learning, or the countless failures that came before that one highlighted success. The human brain is wired to notice dramatic events and ignore gradual progress. This bias makes you believe that wealth happens suddenly, in explosive moments of genius or luck. But the reality is far different. Real wealth accumulation is boring, repetitive, and often invisible to outside observers. It happens in small daily decisions that compound over years, not in dramatic moments that happen overnight. Your mind craves the excitement of big wins because excitement feels productive. When you make a risky bet and it pays off, you get a rush of dopamine that convinces you you're on the right track. But excitement and progress are not the same thing. In fact, they're often opposites. The most profitable decisions usually feel boring in the moment. They don't give you the adrenaline rush of placing huge bets or the satisfaction of instant results. This is why the wealthy develop what I call the compounding mindset. It's a way of thinking that values consistency over intensity, process over outcomes, and long-term vision over short-term thrills. The compounding mindset forces you to protect your capital, grow it steadily, and never sabotage your own progress by chasing the next shiny opportunity that promises quick returns. Think about how nature works. A tree doesn't grow by shooting up 10 feet in a day. It grows by adding tiny amounts of height and strength each day, season after season, year after year. By the time you notice how tall it's become, it has already been growing steadily for years. Your money works the same way. The most powerful growth happens slowly, quietly, and consistently. Most people abandon their financial goals not because they don't work, but because they don't produce visible results fast enough. They start a savings plan, contribute faithfully for a few months, and then get discouraged when their balance doesn't look dramatically different. They don't understand that they're in the early stages of a process that takes time to show its true power. The weird habit that changes everything is learning to find satisfaction in the process rather than the outcome. Instead of measuring success by how much money you have today, you measure it by how consistently you follow your system. Instead of getting excited about one good day, you get excited about 30 consecutive days of discipline. This shift in focus removes the emotional pressure that destroys most people's financial progress. You have to understand that your brain is working against you in this process. It's designed to keep you safe, which means it interprets slow progress as no progress. It interprets delayed gratification as punishment. It interprets boring consistency as wasted opportunity. These mental patterns served your ancestors well when survival depended on immediate reactions, but they sabotage wealth building in the modern world. The compounding mindset requires you to retrain your brain's reward system. Instead of seeking the high of quick wins, you learn to appreciate the quiet satisfaction of disciplined execution. Instead of needing external validation for your progress, you develop internal confidence in your process. This mental shift is uncomfortable at first, but it's the foundation of every significant financial transformation. Here's what most people never realize. The discomfort you feel when choosing long-term thinking over short-term gratification is actually a sign that you're on the right track. That discomfort means you're breaking old patterns and building new ones. It means you're choosing the path that leads to real results rather than the path that feels good in the moment. The wealthy understand something that the masses don't. They know that the market rewards patience and punishes impatience. They know that opportunities compound for those who wait and disappear for those who chase. They know that the best decisions often feel wrong in the short term but prove themselves over time. This is why turning $100 into $10,000 requires weird habits. It requires you to act in ways that feel counterintuitive, uncomfortable, and sometimes even foolish to others. It requires you to value process over results, consistency over intensity, and patience over speed. These habits feel weird because they go against everything your emotions are telling you to do. But here's the truth that changes everything. The people who successfully multiply small amounts into large ones aren't special. They aren't smarter, luckier, or more talented than you. They simply learn to embrace habits that feel weird to most people, but produce extraordinary results over time. They learn to plant seeds instead of eating them, to think in decades instead of days, and to find satisfaction in progress rather than outcomes. The journey from $100 to $10,000 isn't about finding the perfect strategy or the secret technique that no one else knows. It's about developing the mental discipline to execute simple principles consistently over time. It's about becoming the type of person who can delay gratification, ignore distractions, and stay focused on long-term goals even when short-term results are invisible. Most people approach wealth building the same way they approach everything else in life. They want results now, progress today, validation immediately. But the weird habits that actually work operate on a completely different timeline. They exist in the space between what you want and what you're willing to do, between what feels right and what actually works. The first weird habit is learning to celebrate invisible progress. When you save your first $10 instead of spending it, nothing dramatic happens. When you research an investment for weeks before committing, you feel like you're moving too slowly. When you pass up a risky opportunity that everyone else is chasing, you feel like you're missing out. But these invisible moments of discipline are where real wealth is born. Your brain is constantly scanning for evidence that your efforts are working. It wants to see the account balance grow, the portfolio increase, the net worth climb. But in the early stages of wealth building, most of the important work happens below the surface. You're building habits, developing discipline, training your emotional responses. None of this shows up on a spreadsheet, but all of it determines your long-term success. Think about a farmer planting seeds in spring. For weeks, the field looks exactly the same. No visible growth, no obvious progress, no dramatic transformation. An impatient person would assume nothing is happening and abandon the project. But beneath the soil, roots are spreading, foundations are forming, and the future harvest is taking shape. Your financial habits work the same way. The second weird habit is learning to find opportunity in boredom. Most people equate excitement with progress and boredom with stagnation. They believe that If they're not constantly active, constantly moving, constantly chasing the next opportunity, they're falling behind. But the wealthy understand that boredom often signals that you're doing something right. When you're following a consistent investment strategy, it feels boring because you're not constantly changing directions. When you're saving the same percentage of income month after month, it feels repetitive because there's no drama in the process. When you're avoiding risky opportunities that promise quick returns, it feels like you're missing out because you're not getting the adrenaline rush of high-stakes decisions. But this boredom is actually a sign of financial maturity. It means you've moved beyond the need for constant stimulation and immediate gratification. It means you're comfortable with the steady, unglamorous work of building wealth systematically. The people who get rich quick usually go broke just as fast because they never learn to appreciate the power of boring consistency. The third weird habit is treating small amounts with the same respect you'd show large ones. Most people have different rules for different amounts of money. They'll research extensively before investing $1,000, but throw away $100 on impulse purchases. They'll negotiate carefully on big expenses, but ignore small recurring charges that add up over time. The wealthy think differently. They understand that how you handle small amounts determines how you'll handle large ones. If you can't manage $100 with discipline, you won't be able to manage $10,000 with discipline. If you can't resist small temptations, you won't be able to resist large ones. The habits you build with modest amounts are the same habits that will serve you when the stakes are higher. This is why someone who carefully tracks every expense, even small ones, often becomes wealthy over time. It's not because tracking $5 purchases makes them rich. It's because the mindset that values $5 decisions is the same mindset that makes smart $1,000 decisions. The discipline compounds across all levels of financial decision-making. The fourth weird habit is learning to think in decades while acting in days. Most people do the opposite. They make long-term plans based on short-term emotions and short-term decisions based on long-term fantasies. They'll abandon a solid investment strategy after a bad quarter, but hold on to a losing stock for years because they're emotionally attached to it. Successful wealth builders flip this pattern. They make long-term commitments based on sound principles and adjust their daily actions to support those commitments. They might commit to investing in index funds for 20 years, then make daily decisions about spending and saving that align with that commitment. They think in decades but execute in days. This habit requires you to develop what psychologists call temporal perspective. You have to be able to see your current situation as one small chapter in a much longer story. The setback you're experiencing today is temporary. The progress you're making this month is building towards something much larger. The discipline you're practicing now is preparing you for opportunities that haven't appeared yet. The fifth weird habit is becoming comfortable with asymmetric outcomes. Most people want their efforts to produce proportional results. They invest time and expect proportional returns. They take risks and expect proportional rewards. But wealth building doesn't work that way. The most significant results often come from actions that seem disproportionately small at the time. A single decision to start investing early might be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. A single choice to live below your means might create opportunities that would never have existed otherwise. A single habit of reading about finance might lead to insights that transform your entire approach to money. These asymmetric outcomes are impossible to predict, but they're more likely to occur when you're consistently taking small, disciplined actions. The sixth weird habit is learning to value process over outcomes. Most people judge their financial decisions based on results. If an investment goes up, they feel smart. If it goes down, they feel stupid. But results in the short term are often random, influenced by factors completely outside your control. What you can control is the quality of your decision-making process. Wealthy people develop systems for making financial decisions and stick to those systems regardless of short-term outcomes. They have criteria for evaluating investments, rules for managing risk, and principles for allocating resources. When they follow their process and get a bad outcome, they don't abandon the process. They analyze what happened, adjust if necessary, and continue following their system. This habit protects you from the emotional rollercoaster that destroys most people's financial progress. Instead of celebrating wins and mourning losses, you celebrate good process and mourn poor process. This keeps you focused on the factors you can actually control and prevents you from making emotional decisions based on temporary results. The seventh weird habit is learning to see obstacles as information rather than setbacks. When most people encounter financial challenges, they interpret them as signs that their plan isn't working or that they're not cut out for wealth building. But obstacles are actually valuable information about what needs to be adjusted, improved, or learned. If you can't stick to your budget, that's information about your budgeting system, not evidence that budgeting doesn't work. If you keep making emotional investment decisions, that's information about your emotional triggers, not proof that investing is too risky. If you struggle to save consistently, that's information about your habits and environment, not confirmation that you'll never build wealth. The wealthy use obstacles as feedback loops. Each challenge reveals something about their current approach that needs refinement. Instead of getting discouraged by setbacks, they get curious about what those setbacks are teaching them. This transforms the wealth-building journey from a series of failures and successes into a continuous learning process. The eighth weird habit is developing what I call strategic patience. This is different from ordinary patience. Ordinary patience is waiting passively for something to happen. Strategic patience is actively preparing for opportunities while waiting for the right moment to act. It's patience with purpose. Most people are either too impatient or too passive. They either chase every opportunity immediately or wait indefinitely for perfect conditions. Strategic patience finds the middle ground. You prepare thoroughly, position yourself well, and then wait for the right opportunity to present itself. When it does, you're ready to act decisively. This habit requires you to separate preparation from execution. You can be actively learning, saving, and positioning yourself while patiently waiting for the right opportunity. You're not sitting idle, but you're also not acting impulsively. You're building capacity while waiting for the moment when that capacity can be deployed most effectively. The ninth weird habit is learning to think like a systems designer rather than a goal achiever. Most people set financial goals and then try to force themselves to achieve them through willpower and motivation. But willpower is unreliable, and motivation is temporary. Systems, on the other hand, run automatically once they're properly designed. Instead of setting a goal to save more money, you design a system that automatically transfers money from checking to savings. Instead of setting a goal to invest regularly, you design a system that automatically invests a percentage of every paycheck. Instead of setting a goal to spend less, you design a system that makes spending inconvenient and saving convenient. This shift from goal-oriented thinking to systems-oriented thinking removes the emotional burden from wealth building. You're not constantly fighting against your impulses or relying on motivation to make good decisions. You've structured your environment and your habits so that good decisions happen automatically. The 10th, and perhaps most important weird habit, is learning to derive satisfaction from the process of becoming rather than the achievement of having. Most people are motivated by acquisition. They want to have more money, own more assets, achieve higher net worth. But this motivation is ultimately self-defeating because it's never satisfied. No matter how much you have, there's always more to want. The wealthy derive satisfaction from the process of becoming the type of person who builds wealth. They enjoy developing discipline, learning new skills, and refining their decision-making abilities. The money's important, but it's a byproduct of becoming someone who thinks and acts in ways that naturally generate wealth. This internal shift is what makes wealth building sustainable over decades. When your satisfaction comes from the process rather than the outcome, you can maintain motivation through inevitable setbacks and plateaus. You're not dependent on external results to feel good about your progress. You're building something inside yourself that no market crash or economic downturn can take away. These weird habits work because they align your daily actions with the long-term nature of wealth building. They help you develop the patience, discipline, and emotional stability required to let compound growth work its magic. They transform wealth building from a series of desperate attempts to get rich into a systematic process of becoming wealthy. Most people never develop these habits because they feel uncomfortable, counterintuitive, and sometimes even counterproductive in the short term. But that discomfort is exactly what makes them powerful. They separate you from the crowd that's chasing quick fixes and get-rich-quick schemes. They position you to benefit from opportunities that others are too impatient to pursue. The journey from $100 to $10,000 isn't really about the money. It's about becoming the type of person who can turn $100 into $10,000. And once you become that person, once you've internalized these weird habits, the specific dollar amounts become less important. You've developed something far more valuable than money. You've developed the ability to create wealth systematically, repeatedly, and sustainably. The reality is that most people never experience this transformation because they quit before they understand what they're really building. They see the weird habits as obstacles to overcome rather than tools to embrace. They want to skip the uncomfortable process of developing discipline and jump straight to the results that discipline creates. But here's what separates those who succeed from those who don't. The successful ones learn to fall in love with the discomfort. They understand that every moment of choosing delayed gratification over instant pleasure is actually rewiring their brain for wealth. They're not just building an account balance, they're building a new version of themselves. Think about what happens inside your mind when you're faced with a financial decision. Your brain presents two options: the easy path that feels good right now and the difficult path that leads somewhere better later. Most people choose based on how they feel in that moment. But the wealthy have trained themselves to choose based on who they want to become. This internal shift is invisible to everyone else, but it's the most important change that happens in your wealth-building journey. You stop being someone who reacts to financial opportunities and start being someone who creates them. You stop being someone who hopes for the best and start being someone who prepares for what's most likely. The 11th weird habit is learning to measure wealth in time rather than money. Most people think of wealth as having a certain amount of money in their account. But true wealth is measured by how long you can maintain your lifestyle without working. It's about buying back your time, not accumulating stuff. When you shift your thinking from accumulating money to accumulating time, your entire approach changes. You stop asking how much something costs and start asking how much time it costs. You stop focusing on your net worth and start focusing on your financial runway. This perspective makes you naturally more selective about how you spend and more strategic about how you save. A person making $50,000 a year who saves 50% of their income has more financial security than someone making $200,000 who saves nothing. The first person is buying decades of freedom. The second person is buying nothing but lifestyle inflation and financial stress. Which position would you rather be in 20 years from now? The 12th weird habit is learning to automate your financial decisions before your emotions get involved. Most people rely on willpower to make good financial choices, but willpower is like a muscle that gets tired throughout the day. By evening, you're making decisions with a completely different mental state than you had in the morning. The wealthy understand this limitation and work around it by removing themselves from the decision-making process entirely. They set up systems that make good choices automatic. They automate their savings, their investments, their bill payments, and their budget allocations. They make the right choice once, then let that choice repeat itself indefinitely. This isn't about being lazy or avoiding responsibility. It's about being realistic about human psychology and designing your financial life to work with your brain rather than against it. When good decisions happen automatically, you don't have to rely on motivation, discipline, or willpower to maintain them. They just happen. The 13th weird habit is developing selective ignorance about short-term market movements and social media noise. Most people consume financial information constantly, checking their accounts multiple times per day, reading every market update, following every guru who promises to reveal the next big opportunity. But information overload actually hurts your financial decision-making more than it helps. When you're constantly bombarded with market noise, you start making emotional decisions based on temporary fluctuations. You lose sight of your long-term strategy and start chasing whatever trend is getting the most attention today. The wealthy practice strategic ignorance. They choose very carefully what information they consume and when they consume it. They might check their investment accounts once per month instead of once per day. They might read one quality financial book per quarter instead of following 20 financial influencers on social media. They understand that less information, consumed more thoughtfully, leads to better decisions than constant information consumption. This selective ignorance extends to social comparison as well. They stop paying attention to what other people are doing with their money and focus entirely on their own financial journey. They understand that comparison is the enemy of contentment, and contentment is necessary for making rational long-term decisions. The 14th weird habit is learning to view setbacks as tuition payments rather than failures. Every financial mistake, every market downturn, every unexpected expense is teaching you something valuable about money management. But most people are so focused on avoiding pain that they never extract the lessons from their experiences. When you lose money on an investment, you can choose to see it as proof that investing is risky. or you can see it as expensive education about risk management. When you overspend on something unnecessary, you can choose to see it as evidence that you lack discipline, or you can see it as valuable data about your spending triggers. The same experience becomes either a setback or an education depending on how you frame it. The wealthy reframe every financial setback as an investment in their financial education. They ask themselves what they can learn from the experience, how they can adjust their systems to prevent similar issues, and what insights they can gain about their own psychology and decision-making patterns. This transforms every negative experience into a positive contribution to their long-term success. The 15th weird habit is understanding that your relationship with money reflects your relationship with yourself. How you treat money is how you treat your future self. When you spend impulsively, you're prioritizing your current self over your future self. When you save consistently, you're showing care and consideration for the person you'll become. Most people never make this connection. They think of spending and saving as purely financial decisions, but they're actually expressions of your values, your priorities, and your level of self-respect. Every dollar you save is a vote for your future happiness. Every dollar you waste is a vote against it. When you understand this deeper connection, financial discipline becomes easier because it's no longer about depriving yourself. It's about loving yourself enough to make choices that serve your long-term interests. It's about respecting your future self enough to make sacrifices today that will benefit that person tomorrow. The 16th weird habit is learning to find meaning in the mundane aspects of wealth building. Most people want the exciting parts of building wealth without the boring parts. They want the investment gains without the budgeting. They want the compound growth without the consistent contributions. They want the financial freedom without the daily discipline. But the boring parts are where the real work happens. The wealthy find ways to make budgeting interesting, saving exciting, and planning enjoyable. They understand that if you can't find satisfaction in the process, you won't stick with it long enough to see the results. These weird habits work because they transform you from someone who wants wealth into someone who naturally creates it. The difference isn't in the strategies you use or the markets you choose. It's in the person you become through the process of building wealth systematically and patiently. Most people never experience this transformation because they're focused on the wrong timeline. They measure their progress in days and weeks when wealth is built over years and decades. They give up just before the compound effects begin to reveal themselves. They quit the game right when the rules were starting to work in their favor. But if you've made it this far, you're different. You understand that turning $100 into $10,000 isn't really about the money at all. It's about developing the mental framework that makes such transformations possible. It's about becoming someone who can delay gratification, ignore distractions, and stay committed to long-term vision even when short-term results are invisible. The weird habits I've shared with you today aren't just financial techniques. They're tools for rewiring your brain to think like wealth thinks, to move like wealth moves, and to make decisions like wealth makes decisions. When you internalize these habits, the specific dollar amounts become secondary. You've developed something far more valuable than any single financial outcome. You've developed the ability to create wealth repeatedly, systematically, and sustainably. You've learned to plant seeds instead of eating them. You've learned to think in decades while acting in days. You've learned to find satisfaction in the process of becoming rather than the achievement of having. The journey from $100 to $10,000 is really a journey from who you are now to who you need to become. And that person, the one who can turn small amounts into large ones through patience and discipline, is someone who can handle any financial challenge life presents. Remember this: the market doesn't reward the smartest or the luckiest. It rewards those who can endure long enough to let their edge play out over time. These weird habits give you that endurance. They give you the mental strength to persist when others quit, to stay calm when others panic, and to see opportunity when others see only obstacles. Your $100 was never just $100. It was your entry fee into a school that teaches patience, discipline, and long-term thinking. The tuition you pay in discomfort and delayed gratification transforms you into someone capable of creating wealth for the rest of your life. The weird habits are no longer weird once you understand why they work. They're simply the natural behaviors of someone who thinks beyond the moment and acts in service of their future self. Master these habits, and you'll master more than money. You'll master the art of becoming the person you were always capable of being.